started on this hunt a few weeks ago because I read again the article that was written about by Matt Ballard about Babe Ruth playing in Orleans County. And as I read it, I got down to the bottom, and it was talking about Carl Fischer that struck out Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Sam Bird. By the way, on the poster it says Sam Boyd. That's a misspelling. It was Sam Bird. And I thought, okay, well, who was Carl Fischer? I never heard about it. Now, I didn't grow up here in Orleans County. My husband and I moved here in '76. But I had never heard anything about a professional baseball player from this county. So it got my curiosity up. And Carl Fischer was from Medina. He was born in 1905 and attended Medina High School. He was a professional baseball player. He began his career in baseball in 1925 at the age of 19 with the Cambridge Canners of the Eastern Shore League. Now, a lot of these leagues are going to go, ooh, but these were pre what we know today. Some of them have been dissolved and some have been combined. So he spent parts of 6 seasons in the minor leagues, including stints with the Scranton Miners, Manchester Blue Sox, and Johnstown Johnnies. He was with the Newark Bears of the International League for 3 years, from 1928 to 1930, and compiled an 18-3 record for the Bears in 1929. He played 7 years in the Major League Baseball between 1930 and 1937. He played for the Chicago White Sox, Washington Senators, Cleveland Indians, Detroit Tigers, and St. Louis Browns. He appeared in 191 Major League games, 105 as starter, and compiled a 46.50 record with a 4.63 ERA and 376 strikeouts in 823 innings pitched. Although his major league career ended in 1937, Fischer continued to play professional baseball for another 10 years in the minor leagues. He played for 4 years in the International League for the Baltimore Orioles from 1938 to 39, for the Toronto Maple Leafs from 1939 to 41. He next played 5 years in the Pacific Coast League for the Seattle Rainers, from 42 to 46 for the Portland Beavers. He concluded his playing career in 47 with the Pensacola Flyers of the Southeastern League. He also served as manager of the Selma Cloverleafs of the Southeastern League for a portion of the 1947 season. He then coached a junior Canadian League team in Kitchener, Ontario. I'm tired just reading what he did. So that was what I found initially on Carl Fischer. And I thought, man, I've got to find out more about this man. And he lived here in Orleans County. He was from Medina. And one of the things I found, which I think is kind of cute, I looked up Carl Fischer. And in this article it says, Orleans County is located in western New York State on the southern shore of Lake Ontario. The Erie Canal bisects the county and was responsible for the growth of its villages. Although Buffalo and Rochester are less than an hour away by car, the area is primarily farming country, with apple and cherry trees greatly outnumbering its more than 40,000 residents. And in its 200-year history, Orleans County has produced only one Major League Baseball player, left-handed pitcher Carl Fischer.
He was a lefty, huh?
Yeah, so from a little place of nowhere like us.
Yeah.
But that's the part that flabbergasted me, that he was good enough at the time to actually be picked up by major league teams. In entering 1931, Washington was widely considered to have the strongest stable of pitchers in the league. Despite the stiff competition, Fischer headed north from spring training in Biloxi, Mississippi, and on the Senators' roster. Early in the season, he was one of the team's most effective pitchers, and by mid-June reported a 7-1 record, the best winning percentage of the American League. Included in this span of games was an outing that Fischer considered the highlight of his career. In the first game of a May 30th doubleheader against the Yankees at Washington's Griffith Stadium, Senators starter Sad Sam Jones began the ninth inning by giving up a home run to Tony Lazzeri and a single to Earl Combs. With nobody out and Washington clinging to a 3-2 lead, Johnson summoned Fischer from the bullpen to face the heart of the Bronx Bombers lineup. Fischer proceeded to strike out Sammy Bird and Babe Ruth, and then coaxed Lou Gehrig to pop out to end the contest.
Wow.
Fischer claimed he got a $1,000 bonus for his game-saving act. Fischer couldn't have met.
Could use him now.
Yeah. Maybe we can bring him back. They do need help, yes. My husband is a Yankees fan. Fischer couldn't maintain his performance over the rest of the campaign, but still finished with 13 wins and 9 losses while logging over 190 innings. After the season, the Sporting News named him as one of 3 pitchers on its 1931 All-Star Major Recruit team, a predecessor to today's All-Rookie team. There's a complete biography. This is something I found on the internet, and I'm only reading portions of it. But in December 1942, Fischer, married but with no children, was classified 1A by his draft board in order to report for service. His stay in the Army was brief, though, as he was honorably discharged in May 1943 because his legs couldn't handle the rigors of marching.
Wow.
Back in Seattle for a full season in '44, Fischer won 16 games, and his 1.85 ERA was the 3rd best in the PCL. So he did go to the service, but then he couldn't keep up, so then they sent him home, and so then he started pitching again. The other thing is, when he returned to New York State, and in 1949, he was done with playing baseball. And he came to Albion and opened Fischer's newsroom, which blew me away when I read it. So Fischer's newsroom, which my husband and I have been in since we moved here, was started by a national baseball player. That just blew me away. He was active in the local Elks Lodge and the American Legion and was honorary president of the Little League Association. The friends he made over the course of 20 years in professional baseball helped lure many of the game's top stars to the annual Albion Knights of Columbus Sports Night, including Bob Feller, Denny McLean, and Hank Aaron.
Wow.
So it was because of him the sports night started, and because of his connections, he could get high-profile players to come out for the sports night.
That's so cool.
So here we have a very influential baseball player who lived in our community, was influential in the United States baseball, and who came home and started a newsroom. When I found out it was that Fischer, and there are some people here that have lived here all their lives who didn't realize it was him that opened that. But you said that there were pictures of baseball players and so on the walls.
All along time.
But must be he didn't brag too much that he knew this one and that one and this one. But I thought that was cool. I looked in the Medina newspaper just for the heck of it. to see if he was mentioned at all in news stories, because he was mentioned nationally, of course. But what did they say about him here? And I would think they would do something, because he was born and raised in Medina, or in Orleans County, in that end of Orleans County. In 1929, there is Fischer may go to Giants next year. The deal whereby the New York Giants sold Andy Cohen, former member of the Buffalo International League Club, to the Newark Bears of the same league, may take Carl Fischer, Medina, to the majors as one of the Giants' staff of pitchers. So he was being promoted in a local paper. July 22nd, 1937, Medina's southpaw hurler Charlie Fischer, after seeing American League service this year with the Cleveland Indians and the Washington Senators, has been sold outright to the Baltimore Orioles of the International League at a reported price of $10,000. Now, $10,000 was a lot of money in 1937. You're talking millions today.
Yeah.
Billy Kelly, sports editor of the Buffalo Courier-Express, writing under a 2-column heading before and after, has the following words of commendation for Lock Porter's Scuffy Carl Fischer of Medina. Carl Fischer, Medina boy, is leading the American League pitchers with a record of 7 games won and only 1 lost. That was in 1931. In 35, Fischer sold to the White Sox. Carl Fischer, left-handed pitcher, was purchased by the Chicago White Sox recently from the Detroit Tigers. They announced Fischer, a veteran, was obtained in a straight cash deal, terms of which were not revealed. He won 6 games and lost 4 for Detroit last season, but has not worked to a decision this season. And in 35, Fischer pitches 1-hit game. Pitching for the Chicago White Sox, just missed making the Baseball Hall of Fame Saturday afternoon at the Washington Ballpark when he held the Washington Senators to 1 hit and won the game 1-0.
Oh.
Carl Fischer given farewell dinner. Mr. and Mrs. Carl Fischer were given a farewell dinner at Ridgeway Hotel Tuesday night by their friends. They leave today for Mobile, Alabama, where Mr. Fischer will enter into negotiations with the Kansas City Club of the American Association, to whom he was sold by the Chicago American League Club. And that was in 1936. The Bisons purchased Fischer in 1936 in that summer. In September, Carl Fischer sold to Cleveland team. He was moving around that year. Carl Fischer wins playoff opener. This is September also of 1936. Carl Fischer won his 14th game for the Buffalo Bisons at Offerman Stadium Wednesday night when he pitched a 4-hit shutout game against the Newark Bears in the opening of the playoff series. Fischer had 6 strikeouts and allowed only 1 base on balls and was a complete master of the game. In 37, a postcard received this week from Carl Fischer of Medina, recently acquired pitcher for the Cleveland Indians, and postmarked New Orleans, reports good town, good eats, good gathering, good track, arm good.
Nice.
In April of 37, there was headlines, Carl Fischer to remain with Cleveland American League team. Medina's southpaw, this is in July of 37, Charlie Fischer, after seeing American League service this year with the Cleveland Indians and the Washington Senators, has been sold outright to the Baltimore Orioles of the International League. Medina awarded the cup for the largest turnout from any town or city at Offerman Stadium in Buffalo as a result of Carl Fischer Day on August 23rd. 1937. And this was September of 1937. Over 200 attended testimonial dinner tendered Carl Fischer at the Elks Club. So you had over 200 people at the Elks Club to honor him. That's quite something. And then in 1940, under the 5 years ago column, 1935, Charles Carl Fischer sent to Kansas City Blues by White Sox. So you can see, he moved around here and there and everywhere. But his publicity was always in the Medina Journal. He's doing this, he's going there, he goes home, he's gone to this party. You kept track of Carl Fischer. Returning to his Western New York home in 1949, Fischer opened Fischer's Newsroom, a newspaper and tobacco shop in the county seat, Albion. As of 2014, the business still operated under the same name. He was active in the local Elks Lodge and the American Legion, and was honorary president of the Little League Association. Fischer never lost his thrill for the game and made a yearly trip to Cooperstown for the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. He frequently visited Bill Skiff, who had become the Yankees' head of Eastern Scouting. The friends he made over the course of 20 years in professional baseball helped lure many of the game's top stars to the annual Albion Knights of Columbus Sports Night, including Bob Feller, Denny McClain, and Hank Aaron.
And his cards are for sale on eBay.
Yeah. You still can find them.
Cheap, too.
Yeah, you still can find them.
That's crazy.
In 1955, after his death, or before his death, obviously, Mr. and Mrs. Carl Fischer are spending a few days as the guests of manager Bucky Harris of the Detroit Tigers. They will see the Yankees in Detroit play at Detroit Monday and Tuesday. Fischer pitched for Detroit in 1933 to 34. And now this is 55. He's still going to baseball games and watching what's going on. Fischer to join Old Timer event. This is June of 1957. Carl Fischer, Medina resident and operator of a newsstand in Albion, will take part of the Buffalo Bison's Old Timers Night at Offerman Stadium on Saturday evening, July 20th. Fischer had his most successful season with the Bisons in 1936, joining the team in July and chalking up a record of 13-2. This year's Old Timers Night at Buffalo will honor Joe McCarthy, former Yankee manager who lives in retirement in a Buffalo suburb. McCarthy will be elected to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown next month. The program at Buffalo on July 20th will call for a short game between former Bisons and former major leaguers. This is January of 59. Fischer will appear at Jamestown event, a Medina resident who operates an Albion newsroom and remains one of Orleans County's most outspoken boosters for the Grand Old Game, will travel to Jamestown on January 27th to take part in a sports program. Carl Fischer has been invited as one of the Western New York's ex-big leaguers as a guest at Sports Night program. Current headliners topping the program will be Bob Turley, Yankee pitcher, and Jim Brown, pro football record smasher, plus our Carl Fischer.
Yes.
And this was in March of 59. Fischer finds Tiger reunion full of enjoyable moments. Medina's ex-big league pitcher, Carl Charlie Fischer, now operator of Fischer's newsroom in Albion, journeyed to Lakeland, Florida recently for a back-slapping reunion with his old teammates, the 1934 Detroit Tigers. He and his wife returned this week from the southern trip. Tiger Week, a 3-day celebration sponsored by Lakeland's Chamber of Commerce in recognition of 25 years of Tiger spring training in that city, wound up Sunday, March 8th, with a barbecue at the local police range. And then in December of 63, Carl Fischer dies. lefty with 5 major league clubs. Charles William Carl Fischer, 58, whose strong left arm had on many occasions struck out the immortal Babe Ruth, died unexpectedly early this morning at his home at 137 State Street, Medina. The retired major leaguer pitcher had not been ill, but suffered a fatal heart attack during the night. He died at 4 a.m. For the past 14 years, Mr. Fischer and his wife have been the operators of a newsroom under his name in Albion, but he had continued his residence in Medina, in the house where he spent 35 years of his life. Born in the town of Ridgeway, he moved to Medina with his family at an early age and attended Medina schools. When the opportunity to break into baseball came 5 months before high school graduation, he made the decision to forego the diploma and take his crack at the great American game. He started his career with a minor league team in the Eastern Shore League, then played with the New York Penn Pony League, and then with the International League. This was his jumping off place for the majors, and in 1930 he was sold by Newark of the International League to the Washington Senators of the American League. His entire major league career was spent in the American League. And it goes on for a couple of pages here. I won't bore you with all the things that you've probably heard me say before. But besides his wife, the only survivors are cousins and an uncle. So they had no children. Their parents were gone. His friends will be received at the Merrill Grinnell Funeral Home, Albion, with services set for 2 p.m. Thursday. The Reverend Jesse Brennan of Trinity Episcopal Church, Middleport, will officiate, and burial will be in the Royalton Mount Ridge Cemetery.
Cool.
In the Medina Journal in '63, it has, this was before he passed, but I want you to understand how he's involved with this. A big success, the first annual sports night program of the Albion Knights of Columbus hit the jackpot and guest stars last night and was a sellout success, which will probably make it an annual feature. Over 300 dined and mingled with the sports greats, and it has a photo. 3 former pitchers, Bob Feller, Carl Fischer of Albion and Medina, Johnny Antonelli, Tommy Colella of Buffalo, boxing personality Carmen Basilio. Master of ceremonies that night was Leonard Morneau, manager of Lipton Company, Albion plant. Cookie Gilchrist of the Buffalo Bills was also on hand. So anybody who was anybody.
Right. In little old Orleans County.
Little old Orleans County.
That's so cool.
And in December of '63, it says Memorial Fund established for Carl Fischer. A Carl Fischer Memorial Fund is being established to provide perpetual trophies for the Central Orleans Midget League, which he helped to form about a decade ago, and which he had served as president until his death. Since the formation of the league, he had provided a pennant trophy each season, and the purpose of the fund is to perpetuate the league trophy award in his name. Contributions may be mailed to the league in Albion. So they kept the memorial to him going. And also, I want to mention the Knights of Columbus dinner was still going when my husband and I moved here. And my husband took our oldest son one night because it was being held in the Village Inn. And we lived just down the road from the Village Inn. But there was a picture in the hub, the article done by Tom Rivers, and it tells about Hank Aaron being here. and there was a picture of Hank Aaron that was taken at the time. And it tells who was at the April 1974 is when Hank Aaron broke his record. Aaron would add 40 more to his career before retiring in 76. His 755 career home runs stood as the record for 31 years until Barry Bonds passed it in 2007 and ended his career with 762. Aaron also hit 5 home runs in the Negro Leagues. Major League Baseball recently announced it will be adding Negro League achievements to the MLB statistics. That would give Aaron 760 career homers. Aaron still holds a baseball record, so it goes on and talks about this, but during this sports night, it was in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, Franco Harris, Pittsburgh Steelers star running back, was in this photo, and Hammer and Hank Aaron is back in the second one. So there was another photo of the sports night. Franco Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers was in the back row, and Hammer and Hank Aaron in the back. During its quarter century, Albion Sports Night welcomed other baseball Hall of Famers, including Bob Feller in 63, Brooks Robinson in 66, Whitey Ford in 68, Mickey Mantle in 72, Willie Stargell in 1980, Cal Ripken in 83, and Dave Winfield in 86. Yankee greats also appeared, including Elston Howard and Jim Bowden. 64, Catfish Hunter in 1976.
Catfish?
Billy Martin in 77, Lou Piniella in 79, and Tommy John in 82. Some of the Buffalo Bills guests to attend the event included Cookie Gilchrist in 63, Darryl LaMonica in 65, Jack Kemp in 66, Ron McDowell in 70, and besides Franco Harris in 74, other famed football players at Albion Sports Night included Luke Rosa in 64, Ron Jaworski in 77, Jim Crowley of the legendary Notre Dame Four Horsemen in 1974. And many of the visiting star athletes stayed with the Monticelli family while they were in town for the event. I'm not old enough to have watched Hank Aaron play, but I do remember Poppy's stories of him from the time he came to the Albion Sports Night. Jack Monticelli, Richard's grandson, posted on Facebook. Poppy brought a lot of joy to the town by bringing some of the sports greats, and Hank was one of the greatest. I don't have the personal memories of Hank, but I do have the memories of the family stories, and these pictures always help to bring them to life. Thank you.
Cool.
Anybody have it?
Who knew?
Yeah, who knew exactly? And once I started digging, I to find all the things in the newspaper. It really kept you up with what he was doing and where he was going and how active he was.
He was a big deal.
Yeah.
Other than that, you just got to read who was having dinner at whose house.
Right.
And you got to read about him instead. That's even
But
better.
it really showed how respected he was and how visual he was here at home.
Mm-hmm.
He started the newsroom, but after that, he still went to the dinners and he helped promote Little League. And,
So cool.
I thought he was really a cool man. I had never heard about him. Yeah.
Is the newsroom still running?
It's still there, but it's not open. I think last year, it closed?
A year or two ago.
A year or so ago.
Yeah.
And that's too bad, because I remember going in there.
I remember going in there like 20 years ago, and
But
they had everything. Anything you
yeah.
think
Go want
about.
one of those and one of those and one of those.
Yeah. Candy, newspaper.
To think it was started by a national baseball player
Wow.
just blew my mind. I know, that he was there. But a lot of people in Albion, Orleans County never knew that it was a Major League Baseball player that started Fisher's newsroom.
So the building is still there.
The building's there. Yeah, the store itself is closed. It's right across from the bank on Main Street.
Does it still have the sign?
I
think
think
it's
so.
over
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was run by a couple different people after he died, but it was still called Fisher's Newsroom.
I don't think they use that sold terminology anymore, do they? You know, where he was sold.
Oh, yeah,
Don't
no,
they say traded?
traded, yeah.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
right.
That was interesting to me.
Yeah, the terminology.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and the team names too. Some of them have changed some, and you couldn't recognize them unless you looked them up or your grandfather or watched them play. You know, but I just was thoroughly fascinated with this man and what he did, and his humbleness of coming back here and starting a business.
What year did he? What year was he in Medina High School? Do you?
Graduated in
When did he graduate?
1905. He was born.
Yeah, he was
20 something.
20 something. Yeah, I think he was 19.
Yeah, I've got 1925. He was 19 years old.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think he graduated. Yeah, I don't think he graduated.
No, he didn't graduate.
Right. He still may have his senior picture in the yearbook because they do.
Well, yeah, he might have been. There might be a picture of him as a junior.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, yeah, he was born in 1905. So,
Right.
yeah, but I was amazed to think the man was here, and you know, there are people that didn't know it.
No.
You know, and I understand it was a generation before where he was obvious, but. I mean, I can see my husband saying, well, did you know that Carl Fischer lived here? Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned Carmen Basilia. I mean, he was huge in his day, and they still talk about him because he was from Rochester.
Right.
So,
But I was just amazed.
Carmen Basilio, they had a picture down here in the barber shop. Joe
Did they?
Salvatore was cutting his hair.
oh no kidding. And he was just a little bitty guy too, wasn't he?
He was tough.
Oh yeah, he had to have been tough.
But you know, I think I remember all of those events happening or hearing about them.
Mm-hmm.
But if, let's say there was 200 people going to it,
Mm-hmm.
it was only people who could afford to go to it.
Yeah.
And so the average Joe
Didn't go.
didn't
Didn't they had something in Rochester, it was Rochester Press Radio Club or something like that, and they used to do the same thing, these dinners, and pull in these high profile, and I worked for Rich Guan, who owned 7 or 8 McDonald's, and every once in a while he'd grab, you know, some people that worked for him and take them to this, and you were just like, looking around the room going, how the heck did I get here?
Yeah.
You know, and it was...
But it was so expensive you couldn't afford
Yeah.
to go yourself.
Nope.
Yeah. But that's how they earned the money to get those big names
Yeah.
here, because they had to pay them something to get.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm assuming he played baseball in Medina?
Pardon me?
He played baseball in Medina?
Yeah, he played, and that's how he got found
Yeah.
by a representative that lived in Medina, you know, down the chain, but saw him, thought he was an excellent pitcher, and promoted him, tried to get him to go and promoted him to teams and that sort of thing.
Did the high school in Medina have any of his like cases?
I don't know whether Medina High School has anything. You'd have to ask somebody there.
Huh.
I would, if they don't, I would say, why don't you?
Yeah.
You know, because he was a big name nationally.
I was hoping he was buried in Mount Albion.
Oh.
Yeah, that would have been.
I wonder if his headstone has anything baseball related on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
What cemetery is he in?
Oh, geez,
Which way?
Royalton Mountain Ridge.
What is it, Boylton?
Boylton Mount Ridge,
Right,
I believe
yeah.
is what you said.
So is that Orleans County or Niagara
I
County?
think it's Niagara. But I don't
It's
know
right
if
on
it's
the-
called
That
Mount
sounds like
Ridge now.
Middleport kind of thing.
I don't know, didn't
Because
they,
there's a Mount Pleasant,
yeah,
and then another one, there's two big cemeteries in Boylton.
Right, let's see.
if you use Find a Grave, it might tell you
Yeah,
on
It's not.
that. Because it might be Niagara County.
I don't.
Mount Pleasant is in
It's
Shelby.
big, yeah,
Or
Mount Pleasant is, yeah.
We should make it Orleans, yeah.
Let's see.
interesting point there, he was 36 years old when he got drafted.
Yeah,
Orleans County was winning, they used to say Orleans County won the World War II all by itself. They were taking people in that had 3 or 4 kids, and they were 36, 37 years old.
uh-huh,
What was interesting is some of the boys that he was with up at Fort Niagara, now he'd be 36-year-old, he's an old veteran.
Yeah.
These kids are 18, 19 years old, draftees.
yeah.
They were telling, he was gonna show them how you got along up there. So, he's buying drinks for the officers, and he's telling them all of these stories. And the next day, the work list came out, and his name's right at the top.
That's crazy.
Very good.
Did it say who
Thank
his
you.
parents were?
Yeah, his, you had to ask him now, didn't you? Charles William Fischer was born in the town of Ridgeway, the only child of Charles H. Fischer and wife Minnie, who had immigrated from Germany. Young Charles was nicknamed Carl to distinguish him from his father. When he was 3 years old, they relocated to Medina. So they were in Ridgeway first.
Mountain Ridge Cemetery.
Yeah,
There he is.
and that's in where?
That is in Littleton Center, Niagara County.
Niagara County, okay. I wanted to say it, and I thought if I do it.
Is it still the name of the cemetery, Mount Ridge?
That's what it says. And his wife must be, what was his wife's name? Grace?
Minnie, but I don't know what her first name, whether it was Minnie or.
Minnie?
Yeah, they don't, can you believe it? They do have a picture of his headstone. Let's see. Come on. I think they had baseball on it. Oh, there it is. Nope, plain Jane. Just a regular slant.
Yeah.
It doesn't list her name?
It's got her, well, it's got somebody named, what the heck? Can't read it, it's so dirty. But it's showing, what was the name I just said? Oh no. The internet's pretty bad in here. It's like every town hall in
You
Clarendon.
might have to connect to the Wi-Fi, the cell signal.
I want my signal, I paid for it. Oh, shoot. Well,
Well, we can look it up too. And see.
yeah.
I would assume that she's buried there since there's a second name.
There's a name on there, but I just can't pick
Because
it up. It's
they
so
had no
black.
children
Yeah.
or parents were gone, and so I would think it had to have been his wife. Yeah.
Wow.
It's just so funny. I mean, you've lived in a town, I've lived here my whole life. And to find out about Fisher's Mills now, it's like, where have I been and why don't I know these things?
And I felt the same way, and I've only lived here since '76.
It says spouse Grace A. Reynolds Fisher, so she must have had a nickname.
Yeah, I guess.
If her
'cause
given name was Grace.
In the paper, it calls her Minnie. Must have been a nickname.
Well, my dad was born Frederick and they called him Pete. So, I don't know.
Well, this man was born Charles, and they called him Carl.
This is true. Yeah, Grace is
Yeah.
on his headstone, so that's gotta be, that must have been her little nickname.
I guess.
That's so cool.
Well,
you.
thanks, everybody.
Well,
Thank you.
Very much.
You're welcome.